Hello and welcome to the Krista Moore Show. This show is brought to you by K Coaching as another way to learn from industry experts and thought leaders. We're here to help you get on the fast track to success. Our topic today is about teams, and we're going to be talking about the 5 habits of productive teams, and I have a team expert to introduce you to today. Our guest is Lynn Whitesell, and she is a co-founder and partner at Whitesell Consulting. How are you today, Lynn?
Hello, Krista. I'm doing great today. How are you?
Great. I'm excited about this topic. I just think that, the whole idea of teams working well together and that impact on the company's success is a little bit underrated. So I would like to share your thoughts and ideas so that our guests can really start taking team building and team productivity a lot more maybe seriously. So why don't you first introduce yourself to our group so they get to know you a little bit.
Okay, great. Hi, group. My name is Lynn Whitesell, and I'm a global organizational effectiveness and development executive, a management consultant, and an executive coach, and a very excited co-founder and managing partner of Whitesell Consulting. We're a management consulting firm. And both through my management consulting firm as well as my 25 years spent as the global head of talent management and training and development for large global organizations, I have certainly helped create cultures and teams that perform and coached hundreds of executives and leaders and thousands of professionals across the world. And what I really do is help people challenge their current skill set and unlock those untapped areas so they could become better leaders and better team members. And when I'm not working, you can find me volunteering at the University of North Carolina at Wilmington. I am based in Wilmington, North Carolina, and I do a volunteer there with their executive education programs, with their mentoring programs, and also with the Alumni Association there.
That's great. And Wilmington's a beautiful town. I don't blame you for living there. There's a beach, weather's lovely. So I'm glad you're volunteering your expertise too. I really appreciate that. That's one of the reasons why I had you on this call today, because you are an expert on high performing teams, and you're known for saying that high performing companies are a result of high performing teams. And I'd like you just to describe that a little bit for us.
Okay, well, a company's success is really dependent upon the success of the people and the success of the teams within the company. And it's the #1 competitive advantage. If you ask executives and leaders about competitive advantage, they'll name a lot of things about competition and supply chain and finances, but the #1 competitive advantage for any organization is a truly cohesive and productive teams within their organization.
Yeah, and I really feel that that's something that's totally underrated. To even think that someone's team and how well a team operates can be a competitive advantage in their industry or in their marketplace. So describe that a little bit more for us.
Well, it's very rare because it's really hard to do. It's not an easy thing to say, I'm going to have a really productive and a really cohesive team. By the way, to be productive, the team has to be cohesive, and there's a model for building that cohesiveness. But it does take a lot of emotional energy. It takes discipline, and it doesn't happen overnight. But the rewards are tremendous, both for the individuals on the team and the organization. So there is the effort, but many teams or many organizations are not willing to put forth the effort, even though the effort is well worth it.
Yeah, when I think about that, I think about companies that could be a lot more successful, could be more competitive in their market, but their culture, or maybe they've been around for 3 or 4 generations, their culture never really embraced the value and the impact that teams could have on their success. What would you say to those types of companies?
I'd say to those types of salt companies, you've been successful for many years, but how successful could you have been? If success is measured in growth, if you were growing at 1 or 2% per year, could you have been growing at 10 or 15% per year? And I would also discuss the concept of something called the success delusion as well.
Tell me what that is.
Well, the success delusion is a delusion that says, I behave this way, therefore I am successful. So I must be successful because I behave this way. When in actuality, you may be successful in spite of the behaviors. And it could be behaviors of teams, individuals, leaders, whatever it may be.
What that reminds me of is two particular stories. One, I remember a client of ours standing up at a conference and was addressing peers and pretty much saying that they were successfully dysfunctional or dysfunctionally successful. Can't really remember which words it was in what order, but I heard that and I thought, oh, that's interesting. So they feel that they're successful, but they realize they're there in spite of themselves. And what's your response to something like that? That seems delusional to me.
Dysfunctionally successful or successfully dysfunctional, that's an oxymoron. Success that could be realized is so much greater than the success that has been realized. So actually there's been a loss of success. Again, even if you've gained whatever measure, but 5%, and you could have gained 50%, then that is not success.
Yeah.
A very limited definition of success.
Well, and I also want to add, when we were talking about the competitive advantage, there's a lot of industries that are increasingly getting more and more competitive because of the onset of digital marketing and digital distributors and companies. And take Amazon as an example, opposed to some retail stores and things. So this is shifting, and they're sitting there going, how can we differentiate? You know, how can we still remain competitive in this crazy competitive market? And I'm curious if you think that they could do that by just focusing on their team if they didn't change anything else.
I absolutely do. More than any strategy, more than any product, it is about cohesive teams. Absolutely. That it is the #1 differentiator, both because it's just so rare. So if you can differentiate, because let's think about what really good teams do. They drive organizational health. They collaborate. They innovate. They perform. They deliver. They wow their customers. And by doing all of that, they defeat competition. And yes, they have to have the right product, but they have that healthy debate and discussion, are willing to voice their ideas and opinions because they have the trust that's needed to do so, to make sure they have the right strategy and the right product on the market. So #1 competitive advantage absolutely is teams. Success.
Well, if we've accomplished anything today on this show, is that kind of realization that it could be an internal difference, an internal change that you make in your company operations and how people collaborate and work together. I'd like to dive into the top 5 habits that you announce as the kind of the differentiators between high-performing teams and those that aren't. So why don't you go ahead and start with #1?
Okay. Well, first of all, these are based on the work of Patrick Lencioni. And if there's one book that you need to read, which is an easy, quick read, is Patrick Lencioni's 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. And so the model for the 5 habits of cohesive, productive teams is based on his book.
Okay.
And it's his work, but I've adapted and adopted his work and used his work and are presenting his model. So the first level of that is trust. So dysfunctionally, there's absence of trust, and we'll talk about what that means. Habit of a really good team is building trust. And it's important, I'll be quick here, but to know the definition of trust, and that it's founded in vulnerability. Trust is not, I trust it, if I say this, you're going to say that.
Mm-hmm.
Is the belief that you can that you can say things like, you know better than I do on this one. I'm sorry. I made a mistake.
Or I disagree. Yeah.
And to trust that good outcomes will come from being able to be vulnerable in that way.
When I think about companies not being vulnerable and that trust not being there, that's when I do kind of feel like it's political.
Yes, and politics leads us actually to the second part of the model. Again, dysfunctionally in the model would be fear of conflict because there is no trust. And if I don't trust, I'm not going to enter into conflict. And then the habit of a really great team would be mastering conflict, mining for the conflict, being willing to have that unfiltered and healthy debate. And conflict, by the way, can mean is not a negative thing. Conflict is a positive thing. Conflict means you're getting all ideas on the table and that you have the trust to be able to get all ideas and opinions of the team on the table in the context of whatever decision that you're trying to make, and that people are not either withholding input or actually engaging into warfare.
Yeah, or afraid to express their opinions because of the ramifications of that.
Right. And lack of trust what will be done with their opinion.
When I hear you explaining 1 and 2 habits, I immediately go to the leader. I mean, someone needs to be leading by example here in creating that culture of trust and vulnerability, and then the openness to have productive conversations and address conflict in that way. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And you're actually leading to step 3.
Okay, and I didn't know that.
I don't know if you knew that. But habit 3 is achieving the positive habit is achieving commitment. The dysfunction that you'll see on many and most teams is a lack of commitment. And that lack of commitment comes because the conflict has not happened. And in the conflict happening, what occurs again is ideas, opinions of all team members being on the table. And in order for people to commit, they don't have to get their way. They don't have to win. See, conflict is about winning, and commitment is about the common good. What they have to have, though, is their opinions, their ideas out on the table and considered in the context of whatever the team is discussing at the time. And the leader has to set the stage for this. And the leader and the team together come up with, here is how we as a team will enter into conflict.
I recall the Entrepreneur's Operating System, and you may be familiar with this, EOS by Gino Wickman. And we taught and trained around this model, and one of our coaches is an EOS implementer. And they have a tool within their system to help create resolution and to almost create conflict in order to get issues resolved. And it's an actual tool to help guide a conversation. And that is very, very helpful for teams that are trying to just change their ways, so to speak, and start, becoming more conflict comfortable. Do you have any tools or ideas or recommendations for how these conversations can be structured?
Absolutely, yes. And a tool that we use with our clients is using the model that we're discussing today, entering into an assessment. So it starts with an assessment that everyone in the team participates in that talks about the 5 habits or the 5 behaviors of a cohesive and productive team, and it measures that. And then as part of that, you look at trust, of course, and you look at conflict and commitment and the others that we haven't talked about yet. But within that, you'll get to see how the team enters into conflict, and you'll get to develop a model for how your team will enter into conflict. So through the assessment and then the workshop that follows, our clients leave with really concrete ideas of what they need to do from here, where their
Okay.
points in the model are that they need to work on and what they need to focus on.
I love the idea of assessments up front. We like to use them frequently, but to assess the entire organization or various teams and get individual input to be able to understand where the gaps are and what areas need to be addressed just seems like it makes a whole lot of sense.
It really does, and it's quite possible as well.
Mm-hmm. So what would number 4 be?
Okay, so you've got that vulnerable trust, you've built that, you've mastered the conflict model, and you're entering into that healthy debate and discussion and conflict and getting the ideas on the table so that you can achieve commitment. And then it leads to embracing accountability. So to be accountable in the commitment phase, you have to have buy-in and clarity. And then to buy in, again, people don't have to, it doesn't have to be that they win. That's the competitive part of conflict that's unhealthy. It's their idea was presented and they can go forward with the decision that was made and they can commit to that. And then also it's very, very clear. What happens when that commitment's not clear, there's not clarity, is 5 people are in a meeting and there's 3 different opinions of what was decided upon. But when you have the buy-in and clarity that comes from the commitment phase, then you get into the habit of embracing accountability and holding each other accountable to the behavioral standards and also the performance standards of the team. And most teams dysfunctionally think this is the role of the leader. The leader certainly has to model accountability and holding folks accountable.
Yeah,
but the peers who are responsible for holding each other accountable.
I want to share, and maybe my familiarity is more with that EOS system, and there's no right or wrong system, but it just keeps coming to mind. And I've seen companies that will put a kind of a leadership team together, and everybody's very clear on what their role is and what the expectations are individually. And then when they're coming together on a regular meeting, discussion weekly, then they're able to kind of report in, are they on track or off track to meeting those goals? And it creates an environment where everyone is individually accountable to certain objectives, and it rolls up into the entire company meeting theirs. And I'm thinking of tools and practical methods for those that aren't used to taking these concepts and putting them into practice. And what would be maybe some other examples you could provide?
Well, that's certainly an example. Having a team charter, well, a company has a culture. And part of a company's culture is how are our teams, what do we do when nobody's looking? That's really the definition, simply boiled down, of culture. So part of that is, how do we enter into teaming? What does it mean to be a team here? What is our definition of a team? It may differ company to company. And then within those teams, having shared goals where it doesn't set up the silo mentality of I win, you lose. It's we win together. And sometimes that means my ideas are taken up, and sometimes it means yours are. But it's about the next habit, which is collective results. So there are certainly, and we do, as part of our work with client organizations, we certainly do help them put these team charters into place, and all the way up into helping them look at how they transform or augment their culture by doing so.
Mm-hmm. So the final one, as you mentioned, is collective results. Mm-hmm. What is the dysfunction that should be the habit?
Okay, so the habit of really good teams is focusing on results and focusing on collective results specifically. And the dysfunction is inattention to results. And what I can think about when I talk about the collective results, you can think about teams. Let's take a basketball team, and let's take a college or pro, I'll just say college, and a university team, and they recruit the 5-star athlete, the best talent that's out there, the one with the most potential, and they bring together that group of individuals and they put them out on the court. And if they're behaving as a group of individuals wanting to get the most scores, the most goals, the most free throws, the most whatever it may be, rebounds, without regard to the collective results of the team, somebody's going to have to pass the ball to somebody else at some time. And what you end up with is a great lack of the realization of potential on the floor. So that is where the attention is going to individual result, and the team loses. And if the team loses, the individual loses as well.
Yeah, that's a really good example. Can you maybe share with us an example of a company that you've worked with or a company that you're aware of that really made this shift that we're talking about, from dysfunction to implementing wonderful habits for teams, and what was the outcome?
Absolutely. I'll focus on the very first one. Foundational, again, is building that vulnerable trust. Was working with an executive team that had a CEO. So this was a company that had been very, very successful and had gotten new competitors in the market, but still very successful. But it was a case of succession with the CEO that had been with the company a long time left. The new CEO came in, and that CEO had very little regard or desire for building or care for trust, much less vulnerable trust at all in the team. And it started to show in the business results. And so the board asked the CEO to undergo a 360 assessment. And the CEO did. It happened to be a he. And so he had his leadership team together. Of course, in his 360 assessment, they're the ones who gave feedback to him. And so he asked, this says that I'm not a good leader because of what? What do you think, team? And I was, in this meeting, and they're like, oh, no, we disagree with that. And then he brought up another point. Oh, no, you're the best, leader we've ever had. And then I brought up, hey, team, you're the ones who gave him this feedback. And so what happened was one person stuck their hand up and said, well, in this kind of a situation, if you'd have done this, or if you were to do this, that would be better. And that one person willing to be vulnerable at risk of being the whack-a-mole that got the big mallet, on top of the head, really that started the ball rolling and opened up avenue for this CEO to be more vulnerable himself. And so I won't go into all the details, but it did lead to a recovery from the side. And it was based on behaviors and habits of cohesive teams and building trust.
Yeah, that's a great story. I appreciate that. I was thinking of one when it comes to collective results, and this was kind of a simple adjustment and shift that one of our clients made. This is an example of a B2B sales company. They were about 25 million, and they had a great sales team, and they had a really experienced customer service organization, but they really weren't working together. The salespeople would dump all this stuff on customer service, as well as the customers would be relying on customer service for for taking care of them. And there was this animosity built between customer service and sales, because the customer service was saying, hey, we do all the work and you make all the money. So it was a real tenuous kind of relationship between these two departments. And one thing that we had put together was, I guess, would be considered collective results, maybe a program. But what we did is we teamed customer service reps up with salespeople, and they were aware of what the sales quota was for this group of salespeople, and they were incented to help that team that they were accountable to, to grow that business and to hit that quota. And all of a sudden, they started working together, and they got a piece of the action, and they just looked at their role way differently, and they started working more cohesively together. And I'm certain that the customers recognize that as well.
Mm-hmm. And when customers recognize that, and when you're wowing the customer, that is a true competitive advantage. But to get it right for the customer, you have to get it right for each other first.
That's a great way to look at it, because that's that internal customer service kind of thing.
Absolutely. Yes, it is. Quality from the customer's perspective, right?
Yeah. So I'd like you to go ahead and just highlight the 5 again.
Okay.
I would like the listeners to be thinking about, okay, without even doing an assessment, I'm pretty sure this is an area that we need to work on. And just kind of take note of that and then determine what you might do better or different moving forward to start paying attention to that habit, so to speak, to be more productive. So
Okay.
go ahead, kind of number them off again for me.
Absolutely. If you're thinking of a pyramid, the base or the bottom of the pyramid is building trust. And this is the foundation to everything. This is where team members have to feel safe, to be genuinely transparent with each other, to be able to honestly say things like, I was wrong, I made a mistake, you know how to do that better than I do, I'm sorry. That seems to be very hard for some people to say. And the key ingredient, most people that think that the key ingredient to building trust is it's not time, it's courage. It takes courage to build trust, but it's foundational to everything else. The second habit is mastering conflict. When there's trust on the team and team members can engage in that healthy conflict with each other and give that unfiltered, passionate debate around items up there are being discussed that are of importance to the team, rather than either not discussing or bringing up issues at all or getting their ideas on the table at all, or getting involved in ugly, combative type situations. So unfiltered feedback and unfiltered ability to put your opinions on the table. And so more than anything else, it's that unfiltered debate. As much as products we develop or partnerships we sign, it's about being able to enter into that conflict. That's what the success of companies about. So when you have the trust and you have that ability to master the conflict, or you have mastered the conflict, then it's achieving commitment. And that's the habit of when the team members have offered their opinions and debated ideas and had the buy-in and had the clarity, been honest with each other, not just nodded agreement when they didn't feel agreement and go out into the hallway after the meeting and say, that's never going to work, we're never going to do that, but actually buy in, then that is where you achieve that commitment. And once you achieve that commitment, you can hold each other accountable. So habit number 4 is embracing that accountability. And this doesn't mean that the leader is responsible for holding everyone on the team accountable for everything. It means individuals are accountable to each other to hold them accountable. And they actually realize that in not holding each other accountable, they're doing a disservice not only to the team, but to the individual and also to the organization. So number 4 was embracing accountability. And then last but not least, all of these lead up to, and you have to have them all in order to really focus on those collective results. So habit number 5, focusing on collective results. And we talked about an example of a basketball team where that didn't happen.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I appreciate you recapping those and sharing your expertise with us today. I would like to share with the audience your contact information, if that's all right.
That's absolutely all right. Yes.
There you go. And what is the best way to reach you?
The best way to reach me is by that email address that you see right there.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you for spending some time with us today, Lynn. I really love the fact that you're an expert in this area and you're passionate about what a difference these 5 habits can make in high-performing teams. So I want to thank you again. Take care.
I appreciate the opportunity to share. I am passionate about this. It does work.
I can see it. Thank you so much, Lynn.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And thanks for joining us here at the Krista Moore Show. I want you all to know that you can listen to past shows on our new channel, which is GoToStage/channel, KristaMoore.com. It's part of GoToWebinar. They now have a stage, kind of a YouTube area. So all past shows are now there, and you can go back and listen to them on any subject that you find important to you and your success. We care about you, and we want to put you on the fast track. We'll talk with you soon. Thank you.